This video is of the Viper tank, a prototype of the Unreal Engine 5 Chaos Vehicle movement component applied to a tank model. Tanks are different than regular wheeled vehicles because the wheels that are touching the ground are not under the engine torque. They simply are suspension wheels holding the tank up on the tracks. The tracks actually provide movement, and they are pulled by the sprocket wheels in the upper rear portion of the tank. This model shows the tracks moving in opposite directions as the tank is spinning in a stationary position. That is normal. That is how tanks behave. The tracks are calculated, their movement is calculated by measuring how much the wheels on either side of the tank are moving along the forward vector. Specifically, we're looking at the wheel bone of the second from the last suspension wheel in the back. So the back wheel, the backmost wheel on the ground is number 1, then number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and then front. And we're looking at L2 and R2, the left number 2 and right number 2. Now, as you notice, these wheels, when they go airborne, they don't spin wildly under the torque of the engine. They respect the track position itself. And this is what we want, because this is how a tank suspension wheel will behave. In the animation graph, you'll see wheel controller, and that's what the Chaos Vehicle component uses to spin the wheel, to animate the wheel, and also animate the position of the wheel. We then use a control rig to do all of our animation overrides. Specifically, we want to do two things. We want to adjust the spin of the wheels to not follow the engine torque, but follow the track instead. And we also want to keep the track snug up against the bottom of the wheel. So here in the control rig, we see that a function process group wheel spin is called twice, once for the left wheels and once for the right wheels. And then after that, another function is called, and what that function does, the third function, what it does is it hugs the track underneath the wheel. For every wheel bone, there's a track bone right below it. And this function here, what it will do is it'll iterate through every track bone and every corresponding wheel bone. And it will take the track bone and it will set it to a position so many centimeters below the wheel bone. And this is where we determine just how far below the wheel bone we want the track to sit. One place, one value needs to be changed. Very maintainable, very flexible. Again, we use the Chaos Vehicle movement component to provide us with vehicle physics such as suspension and locomotion. And as you can see in this clip here, the Chaos Vehicle movement component does a very good job for us. This is the Abrams M1N1, a little bit smaller than the M1A1 and only 2-man crew. Going back to the control rig, let's take a look at the process group wheel spin. We call this once for the left side and then once for the right side. What it does is it takes a collection of wheels for one side and the spin to apply to each of them, and it calls set wheel spin for each one at a time. This function, all it does is it sets the rotation of the wheel bone. So they all have the same rotation. They're all in sync with each other and with the track. The amount of spin is calculated in this function here for the left side and then the right side. The function measure distance is called, it calculates the distance traveled by one track or the other and how much spin we should apply to the wheel as a result. We also determine if we're moving, both of them moving forward or both of them moving backward? And if that's true, are we braking? Because if we're braking, we do not update the spin of the wheels. We want the wheels to freeze up, to lock up, and look like we're skidding to a stop. So let's go back to the function measure distance and let's look at that. It's basically just math. We take the position of the wheel bone, look how much it traveled, dot product that with the forward vector to determine how much forward travel each occurred, determine how much distance the track actually moved, and how much spin should be applied to the wheels for that track. Now, as we go up this steep incline, as we get up toward the top, I'm going to give it full throttle because it's pretty steep. But what I want you to notice is that the wheels continue to respect the track and not the engine torque. None of them slip, none of them spin wildly out of control. You would see the wheels slipping and spinning on a regular four-wheel Jeep, for example. But that's not what a tank would do with suspension wheels. And thus you have the Viper demo tank.